Next we have, and we got to whip through these, Guendouzi, almost identical playing time as Torreira, one less appearance, same amount of minutes just about, both subbed off 10 times, subbed on 4 times, finished the season at 20 years old with the 5th most appearances on the team. Andy.
I'm going to get lynched for this, Mike, but I'm going to give him a 5. I thought he was, for his age, this is a hard one. He likes to drive the ball forward. He tries to make things happen, but there were too many counterattacks where he limped back to the 18, where you would see, I think there was one specific moment where Ramsey actually sprinted past him and Ozil. Everyone gave Ozil shit, but no one pointed out Guendouzi. And then when someone did it, well, he's a kid. Doesn't matter. If you're good enough to be on the pitch, you don't make those kind of mistakes. And he cantered back way too many times. He's young. I think he's a dynamic player. I think he is, they call him wonder kids. I think he's in that category. But for me this season, he just got thrown into the deep end, and I'm going to give him a 5.
All right, Lee, what do you think?
Well, I think it's been a good season for him from standout season, like his first season. But I will say this about him, when you want someone like Guendouzi coming into the team, when you've got a Vieira and Edu next to him, or a Gilberto, and then coming in and learning his trade, he's learning from players that are not quite good enough, and that's the problem. I think that for 20 years of age, you've got to take that into consideration. I also think that you have to take into consideration that he's coming to the Premier League, he's coming to a country where he doesn't speak the language at 19, and to play for a club like Arsenal, listen, not every teenager comes in and does really, really well. I think that, it's been a good season for him. Couple more seasons, I think we'll be laying call what a great player he is.
Mm-hmm.
That's my opinion. But if you're going on, as Andy said there, you can't keep making excuses for 19 because he's in the team. So I think that he's got a lot to learn. But I do like the way that he's brave. I think I played midfield myself. He's brave enough to come and get the ball in what I call dangerous areas, where if you lose the ball, you're going to get. You're going to be inside our box, but he's prepared to take the ball, he doesn't hide. I think you have to take all these things into consideration. But so for me, 6 out of 10. For me.
Who he reminds me of, just from that little sentence you just said, was like a young Fabregas, where he always searched for the ball and he wanted to make that next thing happen. I think Fabregas had a little bit more of a football brain at that age, but it was very similar, where you saw him play at such a young age and you were thinking, for 16, you should not have this ability.
Yeah.
But that's who he reminds me of. And if we get that, even half of that mold out of him, I think he's going to be superb, but just a season or 2 away.
Yeah, definitely.
Let's hope he continues on that trajectory. We got 7s from Becca, from Winston. Michael Hernandez says 6.5. Fredo says 6.5. Michael Hernandez says Andy is a bad person. Also, I had to put that in there. Matt says 6.9 just for the hair. Guendouzi for me is a 5.7. What I really enjoy out of him are things that are really actually not skill and tactic. Their energy and work rate and enthusiasm, and again, those only go so far. So again, he shouldn't be a 5.7 as a regular starter for a Premier League team. I think that's great at age 20. Whether he should have been playing all those games or not is the question. But 5.7 with every possibility of being an 8 next season, and I hope he will be. Now the question is, what will he be getting paid next season? And I've been very strong about this, and I hope that we don't end up spending too much time on this. But if the rumors are true, he's making $40,000 a year this season, which is crazy for a player who wasn't even expected to really be in the first team. B, he's being offered a contract extension with 3 years left to go on his contract to go up to $75,000 a week, plus incentives. Now the source is questionable; it's the Sun, so this could all be wasted breath, but. I get not letting people leave on freeze, but upgrading people after playing 61% of the minutes of one Premier League season at age 20, when even after this next season, and you see how he does, you've got 2 more seasons to ink him on, makes sense or kind of a continuation of our poor contract strategy, Andy?
I think it's continuation of poor strategy. I think that you could, say to a player who's on 4,000 first season, you did wonderful. If you're going to bump him, you want to make him happy. Maybe jump him up to 50, and then in the contract say, if you perform or have this many appearances, we're going to give you a 30% increase. We're falling into that category. Like, what if he ends up next season becoming a Diaby and he keeps getting hurt? I know that's not the best way to look at it, but we've been burnt too many times before. And with Wilshere, with Ramsey, with Debussy, exactly. So there has to be a better system of doing this. And again, I take it with a pinch of salt because it is the Sun. And I think if there was real legs to this, we would have seen other media outlets picking it up. So I'm not sure that it's actually true. It can't be true, Mike. He's a 19-year-old making £40,000 a week, and as you said, 61% of minutes. So I don't think it's true, but if it is, it's absolutely diabolical.
Yeah. Lee, anything to add to that?
Yeah, I just think that, obviously he was well sought after at that age. There was a lot of teams sniffing around him, because of, he's a top player for his age, So, listen, forget about the wages at this moment in time. I think we picked him up for about 6 million, was it, or something like that?
7.25. I just looked it up.
You know what I mean? So he's going to be on pretty good money and all that. And the only thing I'd add to that is that, try and keep him hungry. You know what I mean? Sometimes these players get too much too soon, and I don't think he's one of those kids, though. To be honest, I honestly think that he's going to be a. When you think about it, he's only 19, 20 years of age. I think we've got a gem on our hands, but
I think if you just feed him in hugs, he would be happy because he seems to want to hug everybody on the team. Let's go through Kolasinac, just ratings. His 7 assists tied with Iwobi for the second best on the team. All of them coming from Hulkamania runs down the left wing. Andy, what do you rate Kolasinac?
I'll give him a 5. I don't think he's very good at defending. I think he gets forward a lot. I think he needs to work on his final ball.
Excellent. Lee?
6. I think that at times he's been, very, very good down there when we played as a wing back. But says what Andy said there. I'll go along with that. Defensively, poor.
Right, and I'll split the difference to go 5.7. You'd expect more out of him on the defensive side. If he were to be a stand-in left winger with a defender behind him, you'd actually probably see more out of him than in his current position. But we can't afford to have a guy like that be one of our attacking players. So, Granit Xhaka, not surprisingly, 10 yellow cards, second only to Socrates. Surprisingly, no reds. Polarizing, handsome. Lot there in the pants from what Andy's figured out. What do we go for, Andy, with Granit Xhaka?
He's another hard one because there were games where he wasn't in the side and we missed him. I think, again, much like a Mustafi, there's just that social media presence of who do we hate at Xhaka. I'm going to give him a 5.5. I think that we could see a lot more from him. I do feel like we're less of a team when he's not in the starting 11. That being said, there's probably other players that could replace him and do just as well. There are decisions and moments like we saw at Brighton where, he makes rash decisions. That's just the type of player he is. We knew that when we signed him. I think he's improved this season under Unai. I think he fits into the system well, but there are players who could replace him pretty easily. So I'm going to give him a 5.5.
All right, and Lee?
My most frustrating player, if I'll be honest, has got ability, but not for me. Not for me. I think that too many times now he does that, what he done against Brighton, you know what I mean, and messes up. And for the mistakes that he doesn't, win us enough games, and that's my opinion, So not as bad as Liechtenstein, or whatever his name is. So I'm going to go for a 5 for me.
Lee calling out complete countries or duchies or whatever they are.
Here's one thing I said, Mike, sorry to interrupt, to my neighbor Tim, because my neighbor Tim said exactly the same thing that Lee said. And I said to him, we're all football supporters. We all know the sport, but Arsene Wenger, Unai Emery, the manager at Gladbach, and then all the Swiss managers have all had him in the starting 11 almost instantly. So there's something that managers at the highest level see of him in training. And I just wanted to pinpoint what Lee said. I echo Lee a little bit where he's frustrating because, like Ozil, we see these moments of brilliance, but we don't see it enough. And it's like, for a player of Xhaka's quality, we talk about Ozil, we need to see it 8 out of 10 games. With Xhaka, we need to see it 6 or 7 out of 10 games. We see it quite often. We just don't see it enough. And it's like he makes one pinpoint pass and then the next 2 is shit. So I don't think he deserves the criticism he gets. He doesn't lose us games, but he could do more to drive us to win more matches. Outside of that Brighton result, but again, the whole team were piss poor. We should have had that game shored up 5-0 before he makes that decision.
And after he makes that decision, there's 25 to 30 minutes left in the game to go on and win it. You want to point to things in the middle of games that might have cost us Premier or the Champions League. That's one of them. Alba's penalty miss is one of them. But again, it doesn't come down to any one thing. But Xhaka just got to make better decisions, and he's always been guilty of making poor decisions. I remember last season, or no, it was earlier this season, I think, when we were giving up leads in the end of the first half constantly. Giving up balls with stupid passes in our own end in the first half to give up goals in the 46th minute.
And Carlitos El Gunner says Xhaka is too slow and our midfield has been breached too many times because of him. Maybe, but he's not a defensive midfielder. You're not expecting him to track back as quickly as a Guendouzi and or a Torreira. And so, he's supposed to have 5 players behind him. So just because he's slow doesn't mean that he is the reason that we're making mistakes or we're conceding goals. There's 5 players and a keeper behind him. He's supposed to be driving us forward. So, if he's making 30 passes into the opposition's half and 15 get intercepted, that's going to happen in a match. You can find that with any central midfielder who is driving a team forward. It's, I think it's an excuse, and it's an easy excuse to pinpoint and blame him solely for that reason.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to give him a 5 because I think, honestly, when he's on, he's on. When he's off, he's off. And so you just split the difference and give him a 5. 2 more quick ones. Lee, Steve Bould.
Steve Bould.
Are you growing a beard?
I thought that when I first logged in and I saw his face.
No, it's hair. There's some hair there on the bottom of his head.
Steve Bould. I would. I don't think you can judge it because you don't really know what he does.
But you got to just make up what he does. Just give us a number. I know it's.
You know what I tell you now? He doesn't even put the combs out no more. Last year he put the combs out. He doesn't do that now. He's got the.
So that's -2 just for that.
Yeah, 4 out of 10.
So here's a question that I had, Mike. Maybe that you're better suited to answer this question. We have financial fair play for players. Does that rule equate to how much the staff make? Because City have a team of 22 behind Pep. And if I'm not mistaken, that's the largest in the league. So at the end of the day, we look at and we see a Bould and then that Juan Carrasito, wherever his name is, who's the assistant manager. Who else is there? I mean, if City have a team of 22 and then there's Arteta and Pep, why are we not doing the same thing? Why are we not having a team of 6 defending coaches, attacking coaches that are working? Because essentially Pep's got 2 jobs at Man City. He manages the players and he manages his team of 22. So he essentially has 2 teams that he manages, and they do all the heavy lifting. So I'm just wondering, does that translate to financial fair play? Because that might be why City, albeit they're spending millions on players, that is a huge, huge part of football, is those coaches and those management of players.
My initial instinct was to say coaches have nothing to do with financial fair play when it comes to the wage bill. But then I also remember there being something in Arsenal's financial report and wage bill about the $16 million in exceptional payments made to Arsene Wenger when he was allowed to resign. And that had an impact on our wage bill. So I can't claim to know the answer to that. I will try to look that up, but I would have thought no. You could do as much coaching as you want, and then of course there could be abuse there where you have coaches who play. I don't know, but their formula works. It's just that they're cheating to get their victories on the pitch.
And then I'm going to segue into this because I know it's next up. Lee put into our chat earlier today, are we ruthless and do we go after Allegri, knowing that he's going to leave Juventus? Mike, since I know the question and I know we want to rate Unai, I'm going to answer it and then I'll let you jump in.
Okay.
I'm going to rate Unai as a 7. I would give him higher, but I think that there were moments in this season that he could have created a better team dynamic for us to secure Champions League football. I like him as a manager. I don't think we are the club that's going to be ruthless and go after Allegri. If Allegri's smart, he's probably looking at that Real Madrid position because I don't think Zidane is going to be there long term. Barcelona might even be a location for him. He could even go to Man United. I don't think Sarri is going to stay at Chelsea, but I still stick with the Lampard. So I don't think, Lee, we're going to be ruthless and sign him as much as I would like that. I just think, like the Pep situation, we just shit out of luck again, you know. But I like what Unai's doing with this team, and I think that, Mike, I'll say it, first part of the season, I said, I just want us to be in the running for top 4, and we were. I think Unai failed us as a manager. He doesn't kick the balls, but he gets the players ready. But, you know, he wasn't given the January transfer window. I think we're going to see some movement this season. Do we really only have 40 million? You don't think we do? Even if we did, you know, we could sign 6 Guendouzis with that, and I would be okay with that if they perform as well as he did. So at the end of the day,
he's running around on the field.
Yeah, at the end of the day, I don't think, Lee, that we are ruthless enough to fire him for Allegri as much as I want it. Maybe Allegri takes a gap year and Unai says, "Hey, I don't want to do this anymore." Who knows? But I think we're in safe hands with Unai. I really do.
And safe may not be enough for some people, and that's the thing.
No.
A quick rating on Bouldy.
I'll give him a 4.
All right, and Lee, Emery, what do you think about?
I'm a 7 out of 10, man. I would have said a month before. You know, I think, if I'll be honest, the last couple of months he failed. You know what I mean? With those 7 games, and that was disappointing for me. He should have got us over the line, put us in a position to get into the Champions League, which was a fantastic job that he'd done to put us in that position to play 7 teams, not in the top 6, and only get 4 points is a big failure for me. Like, you know what I mean? So. But, you know, I did put that in the group earlier because the one thing I said is, you know, and I tried to relate it to, is that John Lukic done a fantastic job for Arsenal and won us a league. It was in '89. But then David Seaman come along and ruthlessly George Graham changing it. I don't know if you remember this, guys, but you probably would do, Mike, was that there was all up in arms about it, saying, "Oh, you know, what have we done that for?" Because John Luke is very, very popular. But George Graham come around and said, "I've got David Seaman in because he's the best." Now, one of the best managers, in my opinion, is up for grabs now, and it does put us in a dilemma. I think, you know, Allegri,
up for grabs now on purpose because you just talked about Anfield.
Yeah, just saying about it. I've done well there, didn't I? So I didn't even know that I'd done that. But so I think
Thomas, right at the end.
I think at the end of it.
But I ask you this though: what has Allegri done outside of a few good cup runs? I mean, Klopp's done the same in the Champions League, but hasn't ever won it. Allegri didn't win it. And he was in a league where he essentially had the best team, and they won. It was like Celtic. He just was, you know, we're not going to take a Brendan Rodgers because he got a few league titles. Like, at the end of the day, I think Allegri is a great manager, and he's great at finding talent that's been wasted elsewhere and brings them in and gets the best out of them. But I just don't see where he's done it in a league where he's been challenged every year. I mean, Juventus usually shore up that league by March. So should that not speak volumes for us?
Yeah, that's a good point. But my point was being when they got to the Champions League final, which ended up in Cardiff against Real Madrid, that was fantastic side, fantastic, you know, and you know, a bit of luck and they could have gone and won it. But I just think that he's the way that, you know, go back to the game against Tottenham, they were out on their feet against Tottenham. He changed it around and ended up winning the game. Now, I'm not saying that Arsenal should change it, but he's obviously a winner. You know, Unai Emery, of course, won the the treble with PSG. So I just think that, you know, like everybody was sort of pushing for Allegri last season. He's now available, and I think the good scenario, if I was Allegri, I'd just say, do you know what, I'd do what Pep done, had a year off, see what's about, because there's going to be offers for him. You know what I mean? There's no two ways about that.
You got to drum up the mania about yourself by not failing next season with some team. You go the opposite direction. You take a job with, you wait 4 games into the season until United fire Solskjaer, and you go there.
Listen, Allegri hasn't
for you.
Allegri hasn't left Juventus without a destination in mind. I mean, he just signed Ronaldo. He's bringing in Ramsey. You know, there's a plan here, and whether it's a
strange decision.
It's a very strange decision, considering they just barely got pipped in the Champions League. I mean, I think he's going to Real. I mean, Zidane pretty much said when he took over he didn't want long term, and I just think that makes more sense. So
you're rating for Emery, Lee?
7. I think, you know, I think he's done a good job. You know, obviously forgetting the Europa League, but, you know, just in the Premier League, I do feel that he's done, you know, listen, when people turn around, and this is my beef about it a little bit, people turn around and say, oh, yeah, you know, you take 5th at the beginning of the season. I think, you know, in a Europa League final, I think most of us would say, yeah, but on the back of that is it's the worst Chelsea team that I've seen for a very, very long time. It's the worst Man United team that I've seen for a long, long time. It's the worst Spurs team that's been about for the last 3 years, and we've still not got above any of them. We've got above Man United, but not got into the top 4 because of it. So I feel that there's a slight bit of failure on it, and the reason being those last 7 games. You know what I mean? We couldn't, you know, get enough points, and for me, I'd love to be able to say, yeah, give him, because I've loved some of the things that he's done, Mike. I love the way that he's changed around teams. You know what I mean? Like, you know, 2-1 down against Spurs look dead and buried, and all of a sudden we've, you know, turned around, and he turned it around and got a 4-2 win. So I do think at times he's done well, but
I remember watching that game in Milan, actually, with Joey Murphy. We had just checked into the hotel and that game was on, and there was an Italian guy going absolutely crazy when they came back. It was beautiful to watch.
You know, so I just think that, you know, and you know, I feel that he deserves another go. I do believe that, but I also believe, Mike, that, you know, he's got to be backed. You know, if he's not going to be backed, you know, it's all right saying, oh, we're getting. Someone said on the chat earlier on, oh, yeah, Allegri won't come because he's not going to be backed in the transfer market. Well, you know, then what is Emery doing? Emery's got to be backed.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. People say, oh, you would just assume Pep would have come a few years ago if Arsene had stepped down. But, you know, would he have come knowing that he, you know, wasn't going to get oil money and silly money and cheating money?
No, he wouldn't have. Yeah. Because at the end of the day, listen, Pep Guardiola has done a fair amount of business with what he's been given. He's improved players that were already at City. But let's not forget, these players cost City a lot of money at a time where, if you go back and look at the transfer market, they were still overpaying the odds. So these players were still good players, and Pep's never at a level proven that he can manage. I mean, he's gone from fucking Barcelona to Bayern to City, and he spent hundreds of millions at each place.
It's incredible at Barca B.
Exactly. Allegri, albeit it's in the Italian league, but he's invested a lot of money into that squad.
Where did he manage before Juve?
I think he was at Milan, AC Milan.
Was it? Okay. Well, you know,
and there's talk that he might be returning to them, you know, with their whole big shift and change, but who knows? But all I'm saying is that if you look at the available managers last season for who could come in and do work with a small budget, then I think we got the best man. When you look at, you know, Fredo put in the comment that he heard an Arscast that the Cronkies are unsure of what the transfer budget's going to be this summer. Well, of course they are, because they don't know whether or not we have Champions League money or if we have Europa League money. So they're unsure now. They probably won't be in, I don't know, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So at the end of the day, it's like we just gotta be patient. And I know the window just opened, but patience, my friends.
Yeah. I'm gonna give Emery a 7.6. I think I think he did well under the circumstances. Could he have done better? Absolutely. And you got to wonder what his role in those players just not being prepared for the last 6 weeks of the season was. Let's see next year when he's really got when he hopefully will have had an opportunity to upgrade the squad and upgrade it generously and see who he's ready to get rid of, and whether he's taking prisoners or whether he's a little too loyal to some people that don't deserve to be there, which is a problem we've had in the past. I give Steve Bould a 2. I don't think our team would have done any better or worse or the same if he wasn't in his position or whether he was. It's completely indifferent. This has been my favorite chat of all the pods that we've done since we started doing it on YouTube, Andy. We got Matt Walker, who puts the pod on in the bedroom, says it makes him hard, but his girlfriend hates it. We have Grant, who's fornicating regularly with the pod in the back. And he points to your voice, Lee, as being the natural aphrodisiac.
Oh, terrific. Shut up, Adam.
Yeah. And then, of course, as we know, both of Mike Hernandez's kids, even though one of them was born before we started doing the pod, we know both of them were conceived listening to the podcast. So good time to mention that we are also frequently available on Pornhub. So that's the player ratings and the coach ratings.